The morning was painted in gold and calm, the kind of day that promised laughter and peace. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have such a loving family, a beautiful daughter, and a son-in-law who seemed like the perfect gentleman. Haroon was charming, attentive, and always eager to help. He called me Amy with a warmth that once felt sincere. That day, he suggested a family picnic near the coastal cliffs, a place famous for its view of the endless sea. I never imagined that it would become the place where my life would shatter. Aisha was radiant in her summer dress, laughing as she took pictures. Haroon smiled at her, the kind of smile that looks genuine until you've seen the shadow behind it. I noticed that he seemed tense, distracted, but I brushed it off as work stress. I didn't know that behind that smile was a plan, one that would change everything. We reached the top of the cliff as the afternoon sun softened. The ocean shimmered like melted glass, waves crashing gently against the rocks below. I stood at the edge, holding my shawl as the wind tugged playfully. Haroon walked up beside me. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. "Yes," I replied, smiling. "It makes you realize how small we are compared to the world." He chuckled softly, then stepped closer. Too close. Before I could move, before I could turn and read his eyes properly, I felt his hands press against my back. There was no hesitation, no accident. It was a deliberate shove. The wind roared in my ears as the world flipped upside down. For one horrifying second, I saw the sky above me and Haroon's face staring down cold, emotionless. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was surrounded by blinding light and the beeping of hospital machines. My body screamed in pain, and every breath felt like fire. The doctors said it was a miracle I survived. My ribs were broken, my leg shattered, my head stitched with 32 stitches. They told me I was lucky. But luck didn't feel like this. Luck didn't come wrapped in betrayal. Aisha visited every day, her eyes swollen from crying. She said Haroon was devastated, that he blamed himself for not holding my hand near the edge. I wanted to scream the truth, but my voice was weak and my heart even weaker. If I told her now, she would never believe me. She loved him too deeply, so I stayed silent. I let the world believe it was an accident. I let Haroon live with his fake grief, his crocodile tears. But inside me, something else began to grow, a quiet, cold fire. As I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a promise. He thought he had ended me. He thought the sea had swallowed my truth, but I had survived, and one day I would make him wish I hadn't. Recovery was slower than I expected. Each step felt like walking through shards of memory. The doctors called it progress, but to me, it was training, preparing my body for what my heart already knew it must do. I had survived a fall meant to end me, and survival demanded purpose. Revenge became that purpose. After 3 months, I was discharged from the hospital. My daughter, Aisha, insisted I move in with them, but I refused. "I'll recover better in my own space," I told her gently. The truth was simpler. I couldn't breathe under the same roof as the man who tried to kill me, so I rented a small house in the next town over, quietly, under a new address Haroon didn't know. A friend helped me set it up. No one else needed to know where I was. Every morning, I practiced walking again. The limp reminded me of his cruelty, but also of my strength. Each step whispered, "You lived." I began to observe from a distance. Haroon's world was predictable routine and pride. He worked at a law firm, loved being admired, and was obsessed with appearances. I started collecting pieces of his life, like a detective arranging clues, clients, routines, weaknesses. Aisha visited often, sometimes bringing him along. He acted like a devoted husband, charming and polite. But when Aisha wasn't looking, his eyes betrayed him cold, calculating, a flicker of irritation when he saw my cane. That flicker told me everything. He knew I knew, and that fear, that tiny flash of guilt, became my weapon. I pretended ignorance, smiling through polite conversations, accepting his help with an icy calmness that unsettled him. When he poured my tea, I'd say, "You're so careful, Haroon. One wrong move could be dangerous, HM." His smile would falter for a second before returning. Those moments fed me. Revenge didn't have to be loud. It could be slow, subtle, poetic. At night, I kept notes, dates, expressions, patterns. The internet became my ally. I learned things about his firm, his financial habits, his secret meetings. He had enemies, people. He owed favors and debts. I contacted them carefully, anonymously, offering small pieces of information that stirred old grudges. I didn't need to destroy him myself. I just needed to open the cracks and let the world do the rest. Aisha, poor soul, was blind to it all. She adored him still, though I could see her joy fading. The smiles were fewer, her laughter forced. She started asking me questions. "Amy, do you think Haroon is hiding something?" I would only smile. "Every man hides something, Beta. The question is, what will you do when you find out?" I watched their perfect life begin to tremble. The once confident Haroon now checked over his shoulder, cautious, uncertain. The guilt he buried began to surface. And I quietly, patiently kept watching. Revenge wasn't about rushing. It was about precision. Like a surgeon with a steady hand, I was cutting away the illusions he built. He had stolen my peace. Now I would steal his piece by piece, until nothing remained but fear. I learned how fragile a reputation could be. People wear appearances like armor, but polished armor rusts when whispered to constantly. I moved from petty nuisances into steadier, more dangerous work, planting plausible slips that eroded the story Haroon had told himself and everyone else. First came the receipts, small things, a dinner invoice with a time that contradicted his alibi, a hotel charge in a town he swore he hadn't visited. I didn't fabricate them. I nudged people who owed him favors to misplace a copy, or sent friendly reminders that triggered automatic confirmations. Each paper was ordinary on its own, but together they began to form a seam in his narrative. Next, I fed rumors with facts. A colleague he'd publicly dismissed still nursed a grudge. I slipped that colleague a question that opened old wounds. "Do you really think Haroon's ethics are above reproach?" The question spread like stain. People who once praised him began to hesitate, glancing at each other as if waiting for permission to doubt. I curated moments to reveal his impatience and temper. In the market, a delivery was late. Haroon's polite face snapped into the sharp, private frustration he thought no one saw. Someone noticed. Someone mentioned it to a friend. I kept the pattern gentle enough to dismiss if challenged, persistent enough that unease could grow in hidden places. The hardest work was inside their home. I hated it. Some nights I woke choking on guilt. I left things Aisha would find subtle, tender provocations, a printed excerpt from a contract he signed, passages highlighted that revealed carelessness, a small photograph altered to show him. Elsewhere, I never accused. I only placed reason where suspicion could take root. Aisha's curiosity changed shape. She watched Haroon differently, counting silences, tracing inconsistencies. Their conversations shortened, sharpened at the edges. She began to lie awake, replaying moments she had treasured. My triumph tasted bitter when I saw the lines forming on her face. Revenge was working, but it was not without cost. I found allies, people Haroon had brushed aside. A former client whose business he had damaged, a secretary demoted for refusing his advances, a neighbor humiliated and silenced. I offered them comforts, a listening ear, validation. In return, they shared truths I could use without cruelty. They wanted him exposed, not destroyed. As weeks passed, seams widened. Invitations stopped arriving. Haroon's smiles shortened. The firm reassigned him, citing internal restructuring. Aisha's laughter thinned into silence. The pattern was no longer only in my ledger. It lived in other people's mouths. One rainy morning, Aisha opened a bank statement I had guided to her hands. She read it twice. Her face, pale and furious, became a map of heartbreak. She whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at her, and for the first time since the fall, I did not have a ready answer. My eyes promised apology and iron resolve. The unraveling had begun. The storm I had crafted was finally ready to break. Every lie Haroun had told was unraveling, each secret surfacing like debris after a flood. Yet even then, I didn't rush. Revenge, when done right, must feel inevitable, like gravity pulling truth to the surface. The charity gala was the perfect stage. It was a high-profile event organized by one of Haroun's former clients, and I made sure my invitation was accidentally extended. I spent days preparing, not for beauty but for power. The silver, gray sari I wore shimmered like moonlight, soft and haunting. My cane tapped with rhythm as I entered the hall. Conversations paused, faces turned. They thought I had died. I could feel their shock ripple through the crowd like a whisper of ghosts. Haroun was mid-speech when he saw me. His confident voice cracked, just slightly, enough for those who watched him closely to notice. His hand trembled, his breath faltered, and for the first time he looked afraid. Aisha froze beside him, eyes wide, her wine glass slipping from her hand and shattering across the marble floor. The silence that followed was delicious, thick, suffocating, and heavy with the truth that no one could name. I smiled kindly, as though greeting an old friend. "Haroun," I said softly, "it's been so long." He stammered, "Why? You survived." "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "Miraculously, I suppose God wasn't ready for me yet." The murmurs began, cameras flashed. In that single moment, the story everyone believed, the tragic fall, the grieving husband, began to collapse. The next morning, the media tore him apart. Survivor returns. Questions arise over Cliffside accident. It was the headline I'd waited months to see. But it wasn't just the press. I had made sure the evidence, the receipts, emails, and accounts of those he had wronged were quietly sent to his law firm, his partners, and a few reporters who specialized in unexplained tragedies. Within days, he was suspended from his firm pending investigation. His friends stopped answering his calls. His reputation, once polished and admired, now lay in tatters. Aisha came to me soon after, her face pale and tear-streaked. "Amy, was it him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took her trembling hands. "You already know the answer, Beta," I said gently. She broke down, sobbing into my lap like she had when she was a child. I stroked her hair, both heartbroken and relieved. The truth had cost her everything, but it had freed her too. Haroun left the city within weeks, stripped of his name, wealth, and dignity. I heard rumors of him living quietly in another town, a man haunted by whispers he couldn't silence. I never sought him again. His punishment was to live. Some nights I stand on the balcony, feeling the wind against my face. The same wind that once pushed me to the edge now feels calm, forgiving. I survived, I endured, and I turned his sin into his cage. Justice, I've learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply breathes and walks away.